Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Slate Demo series on Slate Lingo 101. You know me by now. I'm Nick Porcella, the Assistant Director of Slate Trainings with Carnegie. I'm a former high school teacher, turned admissions recruiter, turned college marketer, and now I teach Slate. So let's talk about our goal for today. We all know that the Slate database that you have come with many tools and modules and access to do a lot of different things. But it also comes with a language that's all its own. So whether you are newer to Slate or you're more experienced, you probably know this by now. If you learn the lingo, you'll be more than halfway there. It's the head start. And so I could have picked any number of terms for today. There are dozens of highly specific Slate terms, but I figured I'd start us with some of the more common ones, especially for new users. So today we'll walk through Slate credits, suitcase, snippets, ping, and configurable joins, which in my opinion is the most relevant. For this, let's dive out into a database. And we'll make sure that we're still shared. All right. We are in our test environment now. So first up, Slate credits. Now, a lot of folks know that there is the ability within Deliver to have many different types of mailings. You can send emails, and you can send as many of these as you want. But you also, of course, have text messages. You have the ability to send Slate print, such as a view book, magnet, postcard. You can send Slate voice. All of these options beyond the email typically cost additional credits in Slate. And the crediting system in Slate is sort of an additional layer. It's a holding place, if you will. And it lives somewhere else in Slate. For this, you would go to database, and you can actually type in Slate credits. Slate credits, I like to joke, these are sort of like Monopoly money. This is funding that is in Slate, but you are paying for it. So if you ever need to add money to your active balance, you would go to add funds and walk through that little form to submit your request there. And it would then add funds to your Slate account. This is then usable in other areas of Slate, many of which are housed in Deliver. So if you encounter this term, Slate credits, it's that way of paying for things in Slate using specific Slate money, if you will. It does correspond very closely with US currency. So if you clicked on that service rates button there, you'd see that in this case, a text message costs 1 cent per text per student or constituent in the US or Canada. You can also see the cost for voice messaging, for different print pieces here. And so I just like to look at this tool anyway to see have things increased in cost as the postal service has increased in stamps or what have you. So Slate credits, that's our little tour there. Second on our list would be Suitcase. Now, Suitcase is a newer tool in the past couple of years of maybe a little brother term that we'll call Briefcase. And the functionality is similar as it was with Briefcase. If you go into database, Suitcase is a tool that I have pinned, but this is one that allows you to bring in objects from other databases in Slate. And I can think of a couple uses for this. Whether you are an institution with multiple Slate databases, might be easier to bring objects through the Suitcase rather than rebuild them. But my favorite is if you are a frequent visitor of the knowledge base, there are lots of Suitcase codes that you can take and bring into your database for things that have been pre-built by Technolutions or preferred partners like Carnegie. If you select import, you're then able to just drop in a Suitcase code. Suitcase ID, click retrieve. You can elect to bring in everything or check different boxes to say what you're not hoping to bring in. And once you click import, it's going to bring the object in. Now, it doesn't bring it directly to the Suitcase module. In this case here, I'd have to go look for the name of this in the module where it went. So I'd go to reports. And now I have 3 here because I've done this a couple times recently in trainings, but you get the idea here is you can then find the object ready to go. If it couldn't figure out one object to another, if there was something in another database that was named differently, it does its best to match it, but you may find some little yellow warning banners here that give you indication that, hey, you need to manually go in and update something. Now, that happens, but it certainly is easier, in my opinion, than creating something completely from scratch. Anytime you want to bring over an object, either in your database or from another, you can go to the object and click copy. This doesn't work with literally everything in Slate, but most things these days have the ability. So I say go explore, try it. It's worth attempting. As long as you have an option for new suitcase, once you click save, you'll get the code, and you can use that just about anywhere. Our third Slate-specific term for today would be snippets. Now, snippets, some folks know from their days in Deliver, because there's a section of Deliver called content blocks, which were formerly known as snippets. And so these two names get used interchangeably, but they're different now. A content block is just that. It's a block of content, whether that's an image or a table or bullet points, that you can pull in to different mailings, for example, in order to save time or batch update things. But this is different from a true snippet because snippets live in the inbox module. If we go over there and you click the third option called snippets, this would allow you to build pieces of content that you can then have at your disposal as a sort of canned response. One example of this, if we go to my test record here and click on my email, this is one place you can use them beyond the inbox module, is let's say I get the question a lot, what are your average SAT or ACT scores? Now, I certainly could type that out each time, and I did spend years doing that at an institution before I learned about this tool. But snippets will appear here, and in the inbox module, you can simply click on them, and it will bring in a whole list of content or anything you could possibly want to bring in. And this is a convenience tool, but it also helps you stay consistent. If you have a database full of snippets, you know that every one of your staff will give the same answer each time. So you're not promising something incorrectly, so on and so forth. So those are snippets, again, not to be confused with content blocks, but once upon a time, they were more synonymous. Our fourth option for today on Slate terminology is ping. Ping is a way to put a little snippet of JavaScript on web pages that really aren't associated with Slate in order to help you keep track of Slate users who have gone to those pages. And so I'm in another environment when it's not a test environment, just to show you a couple nuances. But this tool is accessed through the database, through the ping section, which makes enough sense. And you would then be able to see where you've dropped this snippet of code. If I go back into the showcase environment here to give you the full view, there's just a little snippet of code that you can have your web team or whoever manages your website drop onto individual pages. This then allows for tracking. So, in theory, this page is not a Slate page. I know also in practice it's not, but it gives you the opportunity to have that Slate influence outside of Slate. Now, you can also track on Slate pages. And if you go back into your database and look for your configuration keys, here's a really quick win. Go check this or have somebody on your team look. If you go to the branding, privacy, and ping section of the configuration keys, make sure your embed ping on Slate pages is enabled. That's going to allow anything built in Slate and housed in Slate, such as a form, for example, to be able to track ping data on. And you can build queries and see, how long was Nick on the financial aid page for? You can get a number of seconds. You can get specific URLs. It's an amazing tool worth exploring. But ping, obviously a very Slate-specific tool. Last but not least today is configurable joins, a term that we hear a lot and we get a lot of questions on. So I'm going to show you this in really two approaches and just recognize that we could spend a lot more time here than this today. But configurable joins is a term you'll hear across the database in Slate, but very commonly within queries, because these days, the ability to query in configurable joins has a lot of power in Slate databases. I personally find, from having used configurable joins for a while now, that the biggest challenge or biggest barrier to entry is simply the name. Anybody can do this if you haven't before. I like to think of this term a little differently. I put it as maybe joining between data tables in Slate. So your configurable joins 101 here is simply that data in Slate are stored on different tables. The visual of this is if we start in a person-based quick query and I select filter, look at that. All of this data is sort of the person scoped data. Similar with export, all this is person data, the first name, the email address, so on and so forth. Now, if I go try to look for other data that's not on that person table, such as their application, you see that that's not available to me. But even if I look for somebody's address, their city, their zip code, none of that is available to me because it lives on a different table in Slate. There are a lot of talking points for how to use join. So join one of our other trainings, and we're happy to go through those. But the basic premise here is if you want access to more data tables in Slate, that's what joining is for. If I click join and I want access to address data, great. I can pull on an address table here. And suddenly the tables before where I only had access to person data, I now have the address table too. I can go in and find city and find zip code, but I still can't find that application. That's because that is also on a different table. So the main takeaway here is if you can't find something, it's probably just on another table. We can go in, same idea, join to our application table or one of them. And now we have access to 3 tables. Our person table that we originally had, and then the recently joined address table and application by rank table. Now, if you get it at this stage, great, you can stop here. If you're still looking for a little bit of helpful visual, go to the database. I'm a huge fan of this tool. It's called the Configurable Joins Base Explorer. And you can go there, you can select the table you want to start on. In this case, maybe I want to start on the person table because that's just where we were. I don't like the table results myself. I prefer the diagram. So select diagram. This is not as overwhelming as it seems, but you have all the different tables that can join to person. I like to drag and drop these. And for the example we just showed, let's bring in address and application. All this is essentially saying is the person table was our starting point. And we can access the address table from person. We can access the application table from person. But you can see how these are not lines. These are arrows. This is essentially saying we can't get directly from the application table to the address table. We need to join. And you can echo and mimic this in queries themselves with that same example. We go back. Let's build an application-based query now. And you'll notice that we don't automatically have info on person data. We don't have it on address data, so we have to join. But you also notice, like I just mocked up, that we're on the application table. And so we don't have any address tables available to us. That's all this join means, is we need the intermediary. So in this case here, I'm going to join from application to person. And then I can join person to address. And from there, you have the same tables. Configurable joins is a lot of fun. Just think of it as, how are you getting between different tables in Slate? So as I said, we have a lot we could have covered today. I really just wanted to start us off. If this is helpful, reach out. We'd love to hear from you what terms in Slate are still stumping you. But until next time, you know how to reach us, and really appreciate your time, and take care.